Tonight, we're not here to fix anything, not to understand everything, not to become someone better before you're allowed to rest. This is a quiet space where we gently let go and return to inner peace through soft Zen stories inspired by the Buddha, shared slowly so your mind can soften and your body can rest. Maybe today asked a little too much from you. Too many thoughts, too many worries, too many small things you tried to hold together. And maybe, just for this moment, you're ready to set them down. Here, you don't need to improve yourself. You don't need to solve tomorrow. You are already enough simply by being here, breathing quietly. Just for a moment. Where are you listening from tonight? Wherever you are, I'm grateful you're here, sharing this quiet space. Let your breath slow as if it remembers the way home. Let your shoulders soften like they no longer need to carry the world. Tonight, we'll listen to a simple story. A story from ordinary life, carrying a small thread of Zen and Buddhist wisdom. Not to give you more to think about, but to help you loosen your grip. Because suffering rarely ends by force. It softens when we stop holding it so tightly. There's nothing to rush, nothing to achieve, only a gentle drifting into rest, into stillness. Whether you stay awake or slowly fall asleep, this moment is already enough. And now, we begin tonight's journey with these Zen stories. They noticed it first in their hands. Not the pain exactly, but the dryness, the fine cracks near the knuckles, the way the skin felt tight when they closed their fingers like it had been stretched too far and left there. It was late. The bathroom light was dimmed to its softest setting, the kind meant for nighttime. The rest of the house was quiet. No voices, no movement. Just the faint sound of water moving through the pipes somewhere behind the walls. They turned on the faucet and let the water run warm, holding their hands underneath it longer than necessary. The heat felt good. Grounding. When they turned the water off, the silence returned slowly, like the room was exhaling. On the counter sat a small bottle of lotion. Nothing special. No brand they were loyal to. Just something they'd picked up once because their hands hurt and it was there. They pressed the pump and watched the lotion pool in their palm. For a moment they didn't move. All day they had been using these hands for other people. Typing messages meant to reassure, holding space for stories that weren't theirs, offering advice they hoped would help, even when they weren't sure it would. They were good at it. People said so often enough. You're so supportive. You always know what to say. I don't know what I'd do without you. Those words had once felt like praise. Lately, they felt more like a responsibility. They rubbed their hands together slowly, spreading the lotion over their skin. The scent was light, almost unnoticeable. The motion was familiar, automatic. Something they'd done countless times without thinking. But tonight they noticed how careful they were being, how gentle. They moved the lotion into each finger, massaging the base of the thumb, the place that always ached first. The skin drank it in quickly, like it had been waiting. A thought passed through them, quiet and uncomfortable. When was the last time I treated myself this way? They had spent years learning how to respond to other people's pain, how to stay calm when emotions ran high, how to listen without interrupting, how to say the right thing without making it about themselves. Somewhere along the way, they had started doing the same thing to their own hurt, listening just enough to acknowledge it, then setting it aside, then moving on. They told themselves they were being strong, being practical, being generous. But standing there now, hands slick with lotion, they could feel the cost of that habit. The mirror reflected them back tired eyes, a face that still knew how to look composed, even when the inside felt thin. They met their own gaze briefly, then looked away, focusing instead on the simple task in front of them. They reached for a towel and dried their hands slowly. The cracks didn't sting as much anymore. The skin felt softer, more flexible. Not healed, but helped. They leaned back against the counter and let their shoulders drop. The release was small, but noticeable. Like setting down a bag they hadn't realized was digging into their arm. Throughout the day, they had been the one who listened, the one who checked in, the one who stayed steady when others couldn't. It felt good to be needed. It gave them a sense of purpose, of worth. But it also made it very easy to forget that need goes both ways. They picked up the lotion bottle again and turned it over in their hands. The label was smudged, the cap slightly crooked. It had been tossed into bags, dropped once or twice, used whenever someone else needed it. They realized then that they had been waiting for someone else to notice the cracks, waiting for someone else to offer care, waiting for someone else to say, "Hey, you don't have to hold everything alone." But tonight, no one was here to do that. And strangely, that didn't feel as lonely as it used to. They placed the bottle back on the counter and rested their palms flat against the cool surface. The contrast between the cold stone and their warmed skin made them pause. There was a quiet truth sitting just beneath the surface of the moment. Healing doesn't always come from being helped. Sometimes it comes from helping yourself in the exact way you've been offering to everyone else. They stayed there a little longer, breathing evenly, letting the idea settle without trying to shape it into a rule or a promise. The hands felt better now. Not perfect, but acknowledged. And for the first time that evening, that felt like enough. They turned off the bathroom light and let the room fall into shadow, leaving only the small nightlight glowing near the floor. The house felt different now, quieter, but not empty. More like it was holding space. They walked down the hallway slowly, noticing the way the floor felt cool under their feet. The sensation grounded them in their body in this moment, instead of pulling them back into the day. In the bedroom, they sat on the edge of the bed and rested their hands in their lap. The skin felt softer now, more comfortable. The tightness had eased. It wasn't just the lotion. It was the attention. They thought about how often they had rushed past their own signals. The heaviness in the chest, the shallow breath, the way their jaw clenched when they said yes one too many times. Those signs had been there all along, quietly asking to be noticed. But noticing felt dangerous once. If they stopped to feel, would everything fall apart? If they admitted they were tired, would they still be useful? If they asked for help, would anyone show up? Those questions had shaped their habits more than they realized, so they became the one who didn't need much, the one who could handle it, the one who healed others. That role brought connection, appreciation, a sense of being indispensable. It also brought isolation, because the healer, they learned, often forgets how to receive. Lying back on the bed, they stared at the ceiling as the fan turned slowly above them. Each rotation was unhurried, consistent, unconcerned with outcome. The rhythm was calming in a way that didn't ask anything in return. They placed one hand over their chest. The gesture felt awkward at first, self-conscious, like they were pretending. But they kept it there, feeling the rise and fall beneath their palm, feeling the simple fact of being alive without needing to justify it. They had offered this kind of presence to others countless times, sitting quietly while someone cried, staying with them in uncertainty, not fixing, not rushing. What would it be like to offer that same patience inward? They didn't answer the question. They didn't need to. They just stayed. The ache in their chest softened slightly, not because it was solved, but because it was finally being held. There was a quiet relief in realizing that healing didn't have to arrive as a breakthrough. It could arrive as a habit, as a series of small private acts of care that no one else ever sees. A glass of water when the body is dry, a pause before saying yes, a hand on the chest instead of another explanation. These weren't grand solutions. They didn't make good stories. They didn't earn praise, but they worked. The person they had been waiting for all along, the one who would notice, who would respond, who would tend the wound with gentleness, had been here the whole time. Not as a rescuer, not as a hero, just as themselves. The room stayed quiet. The night deepened. Tomorrow they would likely slip back into familiar patterns. They would listen, support, care. That part of them wasn't wrong or broken. But tonight something had shifted. They no longer believed that their worth came from being the one who held everything together. They no longer believed that neglecting themselves was the price of being needed. They were allowed to be both compassionate and cared for. As sleep approached, their breathing grew slower, deeper. The hand on their chest stayed there, warm and steady. The healer didn't disappear. They just learned how to turn the care inward, one small moment at a time. The park was almost empty. Just a narrow path, a few benches, and a small stream running quietly alongside the trees. It wasn't the kind of place people posted about. No wide views, no dramatic scenery, just water moving over stones, steady and unremarkable. They stopped near the edge of the stream and stood there with their hands in their pockets. The air was cool, not cold. the kind that makes you aware of your breathing without asking you to change it. Earlier that day, they'd felt small, not in a dramatic way. No one had said anything cruel, no big mistake had happened. It was more subtle than that. A conversation where someone talked about their plans with confidence. A comparison they hadn't meant to make. A quiet sense of falling behind without knowing exactly where. I'm not doing enough. I should be further along. This feels insignificant. The thoughts had followed them all afternoon, light but persistent like background noise. They watched the water move. It didn't rush. It didn't hesitate. It didn't try to widen itself into something more impressive. It just flowed, finding its way around rocks, slipping through narrow spaces, pooling briefly before continuing on. The sound was soft. A constant, gentle rush broken occasionally by a splash when the water met a stone at the wrong angle. Nothing about it demanded attention, and yet it didn't stop. They leaned forward, slightly resting their hands on their knees, watching how the stream curved. In some places, it narrowed to almost nothing. In others, it spread out just enough to catch the light. They had always admired rivers, the way they carved paths through landscapes, the way they arrived at the ocean eventually, no matter how long it took. This wasn't that. This was just a small stream, and for a long time they had believed that small meant incomplete, that unless you were making a visible impact, unless your progress was obvious and measurable, you weren't really moving at all. That growth had to look like expansion, like speed, like recognition. Standing here, though, that belief felt less solid. The stream wasn't pretending to be a river. It wasn't apologizing for its size. It wasn't waiting for permission to continue. It moved because movement was what it did. They picked up a small pebble and rolled it between their fingers. Smooth, worn down by time and water. The kind of stone you don't notice unless you're looking closely. How long had it taken to get this smooth? Not days, not weeks, years, maybe longer. The stream hadn't rushed it, hadn't forced it. It had just kept showing up day after day, doing the same quiet work. They thought about their own path, the slow progress, the starts that didn't lead anywhere obvious, the steady effort that never seemed to add up to something impressive. They had spent so much energy wishing they were a river wide, fast, undeniable, that they hadn't noticed they were already moving. They dropped the pebble back into the water and watched it disappear, swallowed instantly by the current. The stream didn't change course. It didn't react. It just carried on. A thought surfaced, simple and unexpected. What if getting there doesn't require being big? The idea didn't come with relief right away. It felt almost disappointing at first, like lowering expectations, like admitting defeat. But as they stayed with it, the thought softened. Maybe arriving isn't about scale. Maybe it's about continuity. The stream didn't know where the ocean was. It wasn't aiming for anything. It wasn't measuring distance or tracking milestones. It was just moving in the only way it could. They straightened up and took a slow breath. The sound of the water filled the space around them, steady and reliable. They realized how often they'd been waiting to feel ready before allowing themselves to count their efforts, waiting for proof that what they were doing mattered, waiting for someone to confirm that this pace was acceptable. But the stream didn't wait. It trusted the shape of the land. It trusted gravity. It trusted time. And somehow, that was enough. The sky above the trees had begun to dim, the light shifting toward evening. Shadows stretched across the path. The park grew quieter still. They stood there a few minutes longer, letting the sound of the water settle into them. They didn't suddenly feel successful. They didn't feel accomplished. But they felt less rushed, less tempted to dismiss what was already happening. They turned away from the stream and started back down the path, steps slow and even. The sound of the water followed them for a while, then faded as the trees thickened. Still, the rhythm stayed, a reminder that movement doesn't have to be loud to be real. They kept walking, but more slowly now. The path curved away from the stream, and the sound of water softened with each step. At first, it was still clear, a steady presence just behind them. Then it became distant, then barely noticeable, and finally it blended into the rest of the evening. They were surprised by how much they missed it. Not because it was beautiful or impressive, but because it had been constant, reliable. It hadn't tried to hold their attention. It had simply been there doing its quiet work. They thought about how often they judged their own life by volume. How loud is this success? How visible is this progress? How many people can see what I'm doing? Anything quieter than that felt easy to dismiss. They reached a bench near the edge of the path and sat down, resting their elbows on their knees. The wood was cool and slightly rough under their hands. Somewhere above them, branches shifted as the wind moved through leaves, brushing against one another in a soft, uneven rhythm. The truth was, they had been moving all along, even on the days that felt stagnant, even in the seasons that felt repetitive, even when no one noticed. They had learned things, shed habits, changed direction in small, almost invisible ways. The kind that didn't make good announcements, but made a real difference over time. Like water shaping stone without asking permission. They remembered moments they used to label as wasted, jobs that didn't lead anywhere obvious, relationships that ended quietly, periods where nothing seemed to change at all. Looking back now, those moments felt different. They weren't dead ends. They were bends in the path. Places where the current slowed, widened, learned how to move around something instead of through it. They realized how much pressure they'd been carrying to become something bigger, faster, more defined. As if worth increased with size, as if being noticeable was the same as being meaningful. But the stream hadn't needed to announce itself to matter. It didn't need to be named on a map. It didn't need an audience. It didn't need to know where it was going next. It just kept going. They rested their hands on their thighs and let their shoulders relax. The body followed the thought naturally, like it recognized something true. There was a deep comfort in letting go of the idea that they had to become more than they were. What if becoming wasn't about expansion, but about continuation, about showing up again tomorrow, and the day after that, about letting effort compound quietly instead of demanding immediate results. They sat there for a while longer, watching the light fade through the trees. The park felt held in a kind of in-between state, not fully day, not fully night. The air cooled just enough to be refreshing. Eventually, they stood and brushed their hands together, leaving faint traces of dust behind. They didn't feel inspired in the dramatic sense. They didn't feel driven. They felt steady. As they walked back toward the exit, the idea stayed with them. They didn't need to widen themselves to justify their existence. They didn't need to rush to prove they were going somewhere. They didn't need to compare their pace to anyone else's current. The stream would reach the ocean one day. Not because it tried harder, not because it grew larger, but because it never stopped moving. And that they realized was something they could trust too. They stepped out of the park and back onto the street, the sounds of the neighborhood returning slowly. Cars in the distance, a door closing somewhere, ordinary life continuing. Inside them, the rhythm remained, quiet, persistent, enough. They didn't realize how harsh their inner voice was until the room got quiet. It was late. The bedroom was dim lit only by a small lamp on the nightstand. A ceiling fan turned overhead with a soft, steady whir, and the clock on the wall clicked in an unhurried rhythm as if time had nowhere else to be. They stood near the foot of the bed, pulling the comforter smooth with both hands. The gesture was simple, familiar, a small act of order at the end of a long day. And still the voice showed up. You didn't do enough today. You should have handled that better. Why are you like this? It wasn't loud. It never was. It sounded normal, almost responsible. Like it was trying to keep them sharp, keep them improving, keep them from falling behind. For years they had confused that voice with motivation. They folded a corner of the blanket, then adjusted it again, not because it needed it, but because their hands wanted something to do. Busy hands made it easier not to feel. The day had been ordinary on the surface. Work errands, a few messages, a couple of small disappointments. Nothing worth telling someone about, but inside it had been heavy. Heavy in the way that comes from carrying yourself all day, from keeping your face composed, from acting like everything is fine, even when you're tired of being the one who handles it. They turned off the lamp and sat on the edge of the bed. The darkness softened the room. Shapes blurred. The fan kept turning steady, dependable. They took off their socks, then paused, noticing a strange tightness in their chest. Not panic, not sadness exactly, just a subtle ache that had been building for a while. They lay back and stared at the ceiling. The voice returned quieter now, but still present. You're behind. You're not as strong as you should be. Other people don't struggle with this. The thoughts arrived with the confidence of habit. They didn't ask permission, they didn't wait to be invited, and then out of nowhere, a memory surfaced. Not a big memory, just a small one. Being younger, sitting across from someone at a cheap diner, both of them nervous, both of them pretending not to be. the way the air felt charged and tender at the same time, the way they listened closely as if every word mattered. First love. Not perfect love, not wise love, but earnest love. The kind that pays attention, the kind that cares how you're doing, the kind that notices when you're quiet and asks softly, "What's going on?" They hadn't thought about that in years, but the feeling of it, of being treated gently like you mattered, was still easy to recognize. Lying there, they realized something that made their throat tighten slightly. They would never speak to a first love the way they spoke to themselves. They would never say, "You're not enough." They would never say, "Why can't you be better?" They would never say, "You're a problem to fix." They would have been careful, patient, kind even when they didn't know what to do. So why did they believe they deserved less? They turned onto their side and pulled the blanket up to their chest. The fabric was warm, familiar. Their hand rested on top of it, fingers relaxed. For a moment they tried something different. Not an affirmation, not a forced positive thought, just a softer tone. "You had a long day." The sentence felt almost embarrassing, too gentle, too forgiving. The inner voice tried to fight back. "So what? Everyone has long days." But the softer voice stayed. "Yeah, and you're still allowed to be tired." The words weren't dramatic. They didn't solve anything. But they created a small opening, like cracking a window in a room that had been sealed shut for too long. They noticed their breathing shift almost immediately. The inhale deepened. The exhale lengthened. The body responded to kindness faster than the mind did. They placed a hand lightly over their chest, feeling the steady beat underneath. The warmth of their palm spread into the fabric of the blanket. It wasn't a big gesture, just a small sign of being on their own side. They stayed there listening to the fan, the clock, the quiet. And the harsh voice, for once, didn't have the whole room. They stayed awake a little longer than usual. Not because their mind was racing, but because something inside them was settling. Like snow falling after a long day of wind. Quiet, slow, almost unnoticeable unless you were paying attention. Their hand was still resting on their chest. The warmth there felt steady, reassuring, in a way that didn't ask questions. The fan continued its soft rotation above the sound, blending with the rhythm of their breathing. They thought about how love begins. Not the kind that comes later, shaped by experience and caution, but the kind that comes first. The kind that listens closely, that leans in, that wants to understand, not correct. First love doesn't arrive with advice. It arrives with curiosity. It doesn't say, "You should be different." It says, "Tell me more." Somewhere along the way, they had lost that tone with themselves, replaced it with urgency, with pressure, with the belief that kindness would make them weak or complacent. But lying here now, they could feel how wrong that had been. Harshness hadn't made them stronger. It had just made them tired. They remembered small moments from that early love. The way they noticed changes in each other. The way concern showed up before judgment. The way care was offered freely without being earned. They had never expected perfection from someone they loved. They had expected honesty, presence, effort. Why had the standard changed when it came to themselves? They shifted slightly under the blanket, getting more comfortable. The ache in their chest had softened, spreading out instead of pressing inward. It felt like relief, but quieter than they'd imagined. They tried another gentle thought, just to see what would happen. You're doing the best you can with what you have right now. The sentence didn't feel dramatic. It felt factual. The inner critic stirred less forcefully this time. That sounds like an excuse. And then something else answered back, calm, steady, no. It sounds like understanding. Understanding didn't erase responsibility. It didn't remove the desire to grow. It just made room for rest. They realized then that loving yourself like a first love didn't mean constant self-praise or blind optimism. It meant staying on your own side when things were messy. It meant speaking gently when you were already hurting. It meant not abandoning yourself in moments of disappointment. Love, they were learning, was less about intensity and more about consistency. A softer word at the end of the day. A pause before self-criticism. A hand on the chest instead of another demand. These weren't grand gestures, but they changed the tone of everything. Their breathing slowed further, each inhale filling the chest easily. Each exhale releasing what didn't need to be carried into sleep. The room felt safe, familiar, enough. They didn't suddenly feel healed. They didn't feel fixed or complete in any final way. They felt accompanied. And that was new. Tomorrow the old voice might return. The habits might resurface. They knew that. Patterns don't disappear overnight. But now, there was another voice too. One that noticed. One that stayed. One that didn't leave when things felt unfinished. As their eyes grew heavier, a simple understanding settled in without effort. They didn't need to become someone else to be worthy of care. They didn't need to earn their own affection. They didn't need to wait until they were better to be loved. They had been worthy all along. Like a first love, not because they were perfect, but because they were here. The fan hummed. The clock ticked on, and wrapped in the quiet, they let themselves rest, held at last by their own gentleness. By the time she gets home, the sky is already dark. Not late dark, just that early evening kind where the day feels longer than it actually was. She drops her keys into the bowl by the door and stands there for a second longer than necessary. Shoes still on shoulders, slightly hunched, as if the day hasn't quite let go of her yet. The kitchen light hums softly when she flips it on. It's not a loud sound, just enough to remind her that something is running in the background. She sets her bag down, pulls off her jacket, and notices a faint smear of dirt along the cuff. Probably from leaning against something outside without thinking. She sighs and tosses it over the chair. At the sink, there's a small pile of things waiting. A mug from the morning, a plate she meant to rinse before leaving, and a ring she took off earlier in the day, resting near the edge, half hidden by a folded paper towel. She picks it up without much thought. It's not an expensive ring, not flashy, just something she's worn for years. The band is thin, the stone modest. When she turns it under the light, she sees a layer of grime clinging to the edges, darkened by sweat, dust, and whatever else the day left behind. It looks dull, tired. For a moment, the thought crosses her mind that it looks how she feels. She turns on the faucet. Water rushes out steady and familiar. She holds the ring under the stream and rubs it gently with her thumb. The dirt doesn't come off right away. It clings stubborn like it belongs there. She presses a little harder, not angrily, just with quiet determination. The day replays itself without asking. A comment from a customer that landed wrong. A look from a coworker she couldn't quite read. The moment she realized she'd said sorry again automatically, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. It wasn't a bad day. Just one of those days that leaves a thin layer of something sticky inside. She scrubs the ring again. This time the grime starts to loosen. The metal beneath catches the light. The stone looks clearer, sharper, like it's waking up. She pauses. It hits her that the ring didn't change. It didn't become something new. The water didn't improve it. It just removed what never belonged to it in the first place. She leans her hip against the counter and keeps rinsing slower now. The sound of water fills the kitchen, blending with the low hum of the dishwasher starting up. The world narrows to this small task. This one thing she doesn't have to overthink. There's a familiar heaviness in her chest, the kind that comes from carrying quiet judgments all day. About how she talks, how she looks, how she reacts, how she should be tougher, quicker, less sensitive, more polished, more valuable. She's absorbed these ideas so gradually that they feel like facts now, not opinions. Like mud that dried over time, hardening into something that feels permanent. She shuts off the water and dries the ring with the paper towel. The stone catches the light again, bright in a way she'd forgotten. It looks exactly like it always has. No better, no worse, just clean. Something in her softens. She realizes how often she's treated exhaustion like evidence. How often she's taken the residue of other people's moods, expectations, and impatience as proof that something was wrong with her. As if being tired or misunderstood somehow reduced her worth. But dirt doesn't cancel out a diamond. It never has. She slips the ring back onto her finger. It fits the same as it always did. Comfortable, familiar, hers. She flexes her hand, watching the light move across it. The kitchen feels quieter now. The day hasn't disappeared, but it's no longer sitting on her shoulders. It's been set down, at least for the moment. She rinses the mug next, then the plate, moving with less urgency. The water keeps flowing. The dishwasher hums, ordinary sounds doing ordinary work. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, a simple understanding begins to form. Not loud enough to call a realization, just clear enough to feel true. What she's been trying to fix might never have been broken. She doesn't take the ring off again that night. Normally she would. It's a habit. Home means loosening things, setting them aside, creating a small distance between herself and the outside world. But this time she leaves it where it is, feeling its familiar weight as she moves around the kitchen, wiping the counter, stacking dishes, turning off the light. Later, she sits on the couch with her shoes off and her feet tucked under her. The room is dim, lit only by a lamp in the corner. Her phone buzzes once. She looks at the screen, then sets it face down on the table without answering. Not out of avoidance, just choice. Her hand rests in her lap. The ring catches the lamplight again, and she notices something she hadn't before. Tiny scratches along the band, marks from years of use. Nothing dramatic, just signs of contact with the world. For a moment, she wonders how many times she's mistaken those marks for damage. How often she's looked at herself and seen wear as failure. How quickly she's judged her own tiredness, sensitivity, and hesitation as flaws to be fixed, rather than evidence of having lived, worked, cared. The thought doesn't come with a wave of emotion. No surge of self-compassion. Just a quiet shift in how she's looking. Earlier that day, she remembers standing in front of a mirror in a public restroom, checking her face under harsh lighting. Not to admire it, to scan for problems. Dark circles, tension in her jaw, that familiar internal list of things to correct. She'd walked out of that bathroom feeling slightly diminished without even knowing why. Now sitting here, she realizes that the mirror never showed her the diamond, only the mud, not because the diamond wasn't there, but because she wasn't looking for it. She turns the ring slightly with her thumb, feeling the smooth edge of the stone. It's solid, unchanged, patient even. It hasn't been waiting for her approval. It hasn't needed her to notice it to remain what it is. That thought stays with her longer than most do. Healing, she realizes, might not be about becoming brighter or stronger or more confident. It might be about stopping the constant inspection, stepping out of the habit of searching for dirt and calling it truth. She stands and walks to the window. Outside, the street is quiet. A car passes slowly, headlights sweeping across the opposite wall. Somewhere, someone laughs, then the sound fades. The world continues without commentary. She presses her fingers lightly against the glass, cool and steady. The ring touches the window too, leaving no mark. There's something relieving about that. She doesn't need to prove her value tonight. She doesn't need to explain herself, improve herself, or rinse herself clean again and again. The day already did what it does. It left traces. And she survived it. She heads toward the bedroom and sits on the edge of the bed. The sheets are slightly rumpled. She smooths them with her hand, noticing how quickly order returns with a simple gesture. No struggle, no force. It occurs to her that the same might be true of her sense of worth. That maybe it settles naturally when she stops disturbing it. She lies back, one arm resting across her stomach, the other at her side. The ring feels cool against her skin. A small anchor. Not a reminder of anything she has to do, but of something she can stop doing. Stop apologizing for existing as she is. Stop absorbing every mood in the room as her responsibility. Stop confusing the residue of hard days with the truth about herself. Those habits don't disappear all at once. She knows that. They've been practiced for years. But tonight, she doesn't rehearse them. She lets them be unfinished, The lamp clicks off. The room darkens. And in the quiet, without effort or instruction, one simple understanding remains. What's real about her has never been threatened, only covered. The rest can be washed away slowly whenever she's ready. The morning is colder than expected. Not the sharp kind that shocks you awake, but the steady, quiet cold that settles into everything. The parking lot outside the grocery store is almost empty. A thin layer of frost clings to windshields and shopping carts, turning ordinary metal into something briefly delicate. She sits in her car with the engine running, hands wrapped around the steering wheel, waiting for the heater to catch up. The windows are fogged just enough to blur the edges of the world outside. She could leave now. She doesn't need anything from the store. But she stays, letting the car warm, letting herself arrive. Across the lot near the edge where the pavement meets a strip of dirt and trees stands a tall pine. It doesn't belong here. Not really. It's taller than the others, darker. Its needles thick and full, even in this cold. The nearby trees have gone bare, branches thin and exposed. But the pine holds its color without effort. No announcement, no apology. She's noticed it before, usually in passing. Today she really looks. The snow from the night before still clings to its branches. Some of it has slipped off, fallen to the ground in uneven piles. But most of it remains resting there lightly, as if it's been allowed rather than endured. She exhales slowly. For the past year, she's been waiting for things to soften, waiting for life to feel more cooperative, waiting for support to show up in the ways she imagined it would, waiting for someone to notice how much she's been holding together on her own. She doesn't say this out loud. She barely says it to herself. But it's there underneath everything she does. The cold has made her cautious, careful. She's learned how to keep moving without slipping, how to brace without freezing. Still, there's a quiet ache that comes from feeling like you're the only green thing in a season that doesn't seem to care. The pine doesn't look lonely. It stands apart, yes, but not abandoned. It doesn't lean toward the other trees. It doesn't wait for them to change. It grows according to something older than weather. She thinks about how often she's delayed her own steadiness, telling herself she'll feel grounded once conditions improve. Once someone agrees, once the timing is right, once the season changes, as if she needs permission to stand. A shopping cart rattles across the lot, pushed by an employee in a heavy jacket. The sound echoes briefly, then fades. The world continues with or without her participation. She turns off the engine and steps out of the car. The cold bites at her face, immediately clean and honest. Her breath shows. She pulls her coat tighter, shoulders lifting out of habit. The ground crunches beneath her boots as she walks a few steps closer to the tree. Not all the way, just enough to feel its presence more clearly. There's sap on the trunk, hardened and amber-colored. The bark is rough under her gloved hand, solid. She notices how the pine hasn't waited for spring to be itself. It hasn't dropped its needles to match the others. It hasn't gone dormant to blend in. It stays green because that's what it does. Not as resistance, as nature. There's something both comforting and unsettling about that. She spent so much time adapting, softening when needed, withdrawing when it felt safer, changing her tone, her pace, her expectations, so she wouldn't stand out too much, wouldn't ask for too much, wouldn't be a burden in a hard season. Useful strategies, necessary ones. But they've started to feel heavy. She steps back, the cold already seeping through the soles of her boots. The pine remains where it is snow-dusted and steady, not asking her to learn anything from it. And yet, something shifts in her chest. Not a surge of confidence, not resolve, just a quiet recognition. She doesn't need a better season to be herself. She doesn't need warmth, approval, or ideal conditions to stand upright in her own life. The heater hums as she gets back into the car. The windshield slowly clears. The pine comes back into sharp focus, framed now by clean glass and pale winter light. She sits there a moment longer, hands resting loosely in her lap. The day will ask things of her soon enough. Decisions, interactions, small negotiations she's learned to manage well. But for now, there's this. A tree that stays green without asking spring for permission. And the beginning of a thought she hasn't finished yet. She finally pulls out of the parking lot, tires humming softly against the cold pavement. The grocery store fades behind her, replaced by quiet streets and pale winter light. The pine disappears from view, but the image of it stays with her longer than she expects. At the next red light, she notices how her shoulders are still raised, braced as if the cold followed her inside the car. She lets them drop just a little. The heater hums steadily now, filling the space with warmth she didn't have to work for. For a long time, she's believed strength meant flexibility. The ability to bend, to adapt quickly, to read the room and adjust herself before anyone had to ask. And that belief kept her safe. It helped her survive moments when standing out would have cost too much. But survival has a way of overstaying its welcome. Somewhere along the way, flexibility turned into constant self-editing. Strength became quiet endurance. And endurance slowly turned into a habit of waiting for things to ease before she allowed herself to be fully present. The pine didn't wait. It didn't resist the snow either. It held it. Let it rest on its branches until gravity decided otherwise. No drama, no collapse. Just a steady relationship with what arrived. She thinks about the last few months. The conversations where she swallowed words because it didn't feel like the right time. The plans she postponed because the support wasn't there yet. The way she's been living slightly folded in on herself, conserving energy, hoping the season would change soon. There's nothing wrong with hoping, but there's something tiring about postponing your own solidity. The light turns green. She drives on. At home, she sets her keys on the counter and shrugs off her coat. The house is quiet. Not empty, just still. She makes herself tea and waits for the kettle to boil, watching steam gather and drift upward. Outside the kitchen window, the same winter sky stretches overhead. Pale, open, unconcerned with how anyone feels about it. She carries the mug to the table and sits down. The chair creaks softly beneath her weight. It holds. No adjustment needed. She realizes how often she's mistaken standing alone for being unsupported. As if steadiness only counts when it's witnessed. As if being rooted without applause somehow makes it less real. The pine doesn't have an audience. It stands green because that's how it meets the world. Not to prove resilience, not to inspire, just because that's its nature. The tea warms her hands. She takes a slow sip. The heat spreads easily without effort. She doesn't rush the moment. There's nothing she needs to prepare for right now. She thinks about what it would mean to stop waiting for ideal conditions, to stop negotiating her presence with the weather of other people's moods, to allow herself to be consistent even when things around her feel uncertain or cold. Not rigid, just rooted. That idea feels different from the pressure she's known. It doesn't ask her to harden. It doesn't demand constant effort. It suggests something quieter, something more honest, being herself even when it's not mirrored back. She sets the mug down and rests her hands on the table. They're steady, warm now. The day ahead still exists, so do its challenges. But they no longer feel like reasons to disappear. She doesn't make a promise to change. She doesn't rehearse a new version of herself. She simply notices that she's done waiting to be supported before she stands. Outside, the light shifts again. The morning moves on. Somewhere, snow slides from a branch and lands softly on the ground, unnoticed. And in the quiet of her kitchen, something settles into place. She can be green in winter. She can stand without spring. She can be herself fully without asking the season to agree. The rest will change when it does. She doesn't need to. The bathroom light is too bright, but she leaves it on anyway. It's the only way to see what she's doing. The kid is in the tub splashing gently with a plastic cup, making little waves that hit the sides and fall back again. The water is warm, the air is damp, and the mirror is already starting to fog around the edges. She kneels on the bath mat with a towel folded across her lap. One hand on the faucet, adjusting the temperature, the other steadying a bottle of shampoo so it doesn't tip. She moves in small, practiced motions, the kind you learn when you're doing 3 things at once without wanting it to feel chaotic. She's tired. Not the dramatic kind of tired where you're falling asleep standing up. The quieter kind. The kind that shows up in your shoulders, in the way your eyes stay a little tense, even when you're smiling, in the way your thoughts don't fully stop when the day is over. The kid laughs at something, maybe a bubble, maybe nothing. She laughs too automatically. It comes out soft. Real enough. She reaches into the tub and scoops a bit of water onto the kid's arm to rinse off soap. The water beads on the skin and runs down in thin lines. For a second, she watches it like she's never seen water before. A drop. Small, clear, unimportant looking. Her mind does what it often does when she's tired. It starts measuring. How much she did today, how much she didn't do, the messages she didn't reply to, the groceries she forgot, the fact that she still hasn't scheduled that appointment she keeps meaning to schedule, the way she snapped a little earlier when she didn't want to. She hates that part of herself, the part that keeps score, the part that acts like life is a test she's quietly failing. She takes a breath through her nose slow and looks back at the tub. The kid is making soup with bath toys, stirring the water with complete confidence. The plastic cup dips and rises, and the water keeps responding, patient and endless. It's strange how something so ordinary can feel so big when you're worn down. She wipes a bit of water off the kid's cheek with her thumb. The skin is warm, alive, right here. On the edge of the tub, a drop of water clings to the porcelain. It trembles slightly when the kid kicks. It holds on, then finally lets go, sliding down and disappearing into the bath water. And something in her shifts. Not like a breakthrough, more like a widening. She's been feeling lately like she's just one drop. One small person with limited energy, limited patience, limited time. A drop trying to handle an ocean of needs. Work, home, relationships, bills, expectations. The constant background noise of the world. No wonder she feels like she's not enough. A drop is not enough to be an ocean. But that's the wrong comparison. Because a drop isn't separate from the ocean. It's ocean in a smaller shape. The thought comes quietly without any spiritual language attached. Just a simple recognition, like remembering something she knew as a kid and forgot when life got complicated. She looks at her hands. They're damp. A little pruny at the fingertips from water. Not perfect hands. Hands that have done dishes, wiped noses, typed emails, held steering wheels, carried bags. Hands that have tried. She's been treating herself like a single unit that has to perform perfectly to deserve rest. Like her worth depends on how clean she keeps everything, how calm she stays, how much she can hold. But what if she's part of something larger than her daily performance? Not larger in a mystical way. Larger in the way life is larger than one moment. Larger than one bad day. Larger than one sharp tone. Larger than one mistake. A drop can look small when you isolate it. But when you see where it belongs, it stops being small. The kid splashes again, sending a wave over the edge. Water spills onto the floor. She reaches for the towel and wipes it up. No panic, no frustration, just a quick cleanup. She notices that she didn't get mad, not because she's enlightened, because she's tired enough to stop insisting everything be perfect. The floor can be wet for a moment. The world doesn't end. The towel handles it. That feels like a clue. Maybe she doesn't have to clamp down so hard on every detail to be okay. She rinses the kid's hair, watching suds run down and dissolve into the water. Soap is there, then it's gone. The water stays. She thinks about all the feelings she's had today, irritation, guilt, worry, and how she keeps assuming they're permanent. How she keeps acting like each emotion defines her, like each moment is a verdict. But emotions are more like soap. They show up, they swirl, and they dissolve. Something stays underneath them, something wider. She reaches for the cup and pours warm water gently over the kid's head. The kid squeezes their eyes shut and squeals, then laughs again. The sound bounces off the tile walls and lands in her chest, softening it. She looks at the water again, not as a task, as a reminder. She's not just a drop trying to survive the ocean. She's the ocean showing up as a drop, and that changes how the weight feels. She drains the tub slowly. The water circles the drain, pulling the remaining bubbles into a small spinning pattern before they disappear. The sound is steady and familiar, something she's heard hundreds of times before. Tonight she watches it a little longer than usual. The kid steps out wrapped in a towel, warm and clean, and already reaching for pajamas. She dries small arms and legs, the movements automatic now learned through repetition. When she finishes, the kid runs off toward the bedroom, leaving behind a trail of damp footprints that fade as quickly as they appear. She stays in the bathroom for a moment. The mirror is fogged over completely now. She wipes a clear circle with her sleeve and looks at her reflection. Her face looks the same as it always does at this hour. Tired eyes, slight crease between her brows, hair pulled back without much thought. She notices the urge to evaluate, to decide whether she looks okay, whether she looks like someone who has it together. She lets the urge pass. Instead, she looks at herself the way she looked at the water, without narrowing the frame too much. She sees someone standing in a warm room after a long day still showing up. Someone whose energy isn't endless, but whose care keeps finding a way to move. Someone who has been measuring herself as if she were alone when she isn't. She turns off the light and walks down the hallway, following the soft sounds of bedtime routines. Pajamas rustling, a book being dropped, a voice asking a question that doesn't need a perfect answer. Later, when the lights are off and the house finally quiets, she sits on the edge of the couch with a glass of water in her hand. She takes a sip and feels it move easily down her throat, no effort required. It's strange how much she's resisted ease. She's been telling herself that if she relaxes too much, things will fall apart. That if she doesn't keep track of every detail, she'll fail someone. That if she stops holding everything tightly, she'll be exposed as not enough. But water doesn't work like that. It holds what it can, releases what it can't, and keeps moving anyway. She thinks about the times today she felt overwhelmed, how those moments felt total while they were happening, like the whole truth. And yet, here she is now, breathing normally, the day already thinning at the edges. The feelings didn't last. They never do. She's been confusing intensity with importance, treating every emotional surge as a final statement about who she is. But an ocean doesn't become small just because a wave rises. She rests her head back against the couch and closes her eyes for a moment. Not to sleep, just to stop scanning. Her body settles into the cushions without instruction. She notices her breath again. In, out. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels sufficient. There's relief in realizing she doesn't have to hold herself together as a single point. She doesn't have to be perfectly calm, perfectly kind, perfectly patient to be worthy of rest. She's allowed to have ripples. She's allowed to have storms. None of it takes away the depth underneath. She finishes the water and sets the glass on the table. A small ring of moisture forms beneath it. She wipes it away with her sleeve, then smiles faintly at herself. Some habits stay. She stands and turns off the last light the house slipping into darkness without resistance. In the quiet, she feels something steady beneath the usual noise of her thoughts. Not confidence, not certainty, just space. Enough space to hold tiredness without judgment. Enough space to let the day be what it was without turning it into a verdict. Enough space to remember that she belongs to something larger than any single moment. As she heads toward bed, she doesn't try to carry the ocean with her. She doesn't need to. It's already here. The laundromat smells like warm detergent and metal. Not unpleasant, just familiar. The kind of place that exists more for function than comfort. Rows of machines line the walls, most of them humming some rattling slightly out of rhythm. The floor is clean, but permanently stained, marked by years of small spills no one remembers anymore. They sit on a plastic chair with a basket at their feet, watching clothes tumble behind thick glass. Shirts, towels, socks. Everything mixing together, colors blurred by motion. It's late enough that the room is mostly empty. A man in the corner folds slowly, one item at a time. Someone else scrolls on their phone with headphones in. No one looks at anyone for too long. There's an unspoken agreement here. Everyone is tired. Everyone just wants to finish and go home. They pull a hoodie from the basket and notice a smear of something dark along the sleeve. Clay, maybe, or dirt. Hard to tell. It's dried, encrusted slightly, as if it's been there longer than today. They frown. All day it's felt like that. Like something has been stuck to them without permission. Other people's moods. A tense conversation. A look that lingered just long enough to make them question themselves. None of it dramatic. Just enough to feel off. They rub at the stain with their thumb. It doesn't come off. A familiar thought rises quiet, but sharp. Why do I always look like this by the end of the day? Not just the clothes, the feeling. They've learned to present well, to be capable, to keep things together. But by night there's always residue, fatigue, self-doubt, a sense of being worn down by contact. The dryer buzzes loudly, startling them just a little. They stand, unload warm clothes, and move to the folding table near the window. The surface is smooth, cool in spots where no one has touched it recently. As they fold their hands, move automatically. Years of repetition, the mind drifts. They remember something they once heard, maybe in a story, maybe in passing, about a golden statue hidden under layers of clay to protect it from thieves. The gold had been covered over, made ordinary on purpose. Over time, people forgot what was underneath. They treated it like dirt. Until one day, the clay cracked. They'd liked that story when they first heard it. Thought it was comforting. Lately, it feels more uncomfortable than inspiring. Because what if the clay never cracks on its own? What if people only ever see the outer layer? They fold another shirt, smoothing the fabric carefully, as if doing so might smooth something else too. There's a tension in their chest they've grown used to. Not panic, just a low-grade bracing. Like they're always preparing for judgment, even in places where no one is really watching. They catch their reflection in the darkened window. fluorescent lights above night behind the glass. Their face looks flat in this lighting, washed out, tired. They turn away. It's easier not to look too closely. The thought comes again, softer this time. Maybe this is just who I am. The outer layer, the roughness, the unremarkable version. Maybe there was never anything precious underneath. Maybe the story was just a story. They feel a flicker of sadness at that. Quick, contained. They've learned not to linger there. The machines continue their steady noise. Clothes tumble. Time passes. They finish folding and place everything neatly back into the basket. The hoodie with a stain goes in last. They hesitate, then leave it as it is. No scrubbing, no fixing, just folded like the rest. There's something tiring about constantly trying to clean yourself up. As they lift the basket and head for the door, they feel the familiar weight settle back onto their shoulders. The day hasn't ended yet. There's still a drive home, still things to prepare for tomorrow. But the image of the statue stays with them, gold covered in clay, not damaged, just hidden. They step out into the cool night air. The door closes behind them with a soft thud. For a moment they stand still, breathing, basket balanced on one hip. They don't feel golden, but they don't feel broken either. Just layered. And something about that feels unfinished rather than lost. The drive home is quiet. Streetlights pass in slow intervals, lighting up the windshield for a second before fading again. The basket sits on the passenger seat, steady, familiar. Nothing about the night feels urgent. It's just moving forward one block at a time. At a stoplight, they glance down at their hands on the steering wheel. The skin looks dry in the glow of the dashboard, faint lines visible around the knuckles. Hands that have worked all day, held things together. Let go of things that didn't need to be held anymore. They think again about the clay. How it didn't appear overnight. How it must have been applied carefully, layer by layer, to protect something valuable from being taken too soon. How at first it probably felt heavy, uncomfortable, but necessary. They've had layers like that too. The careful tone they use in difficult conversations. The way they keep emotions contained, tidy, easy for others to handle. The habit of being useful, agreeable, low maintenance. Those layers didn't form because something was wrong inside. They formed because at some point it wasn't safe to be fully seen, or fully felt, or fully honest. Clay is not an accident. It's a response. They pull into the driveway and turn off the engine. The house is dark except for a small light in the hallway. Inside, everything is still. Shoes by the door, mail on the counter, a familiar quiet that doesn't ask questions. They carry the basket in and set it down near the couch. One hoodie slips out slightly, the stained sleeve visible again. They pause, then pick it up. This time they look at it differently. Not as something dirty, as something that's been out in the world. They think about how quickly they label parts of themselves as problems. How fast they assume the outer layer is the truth. As if exhaustion equals emptiness. As if roughness means lack. But clay doesn't erase gold. It hides it when hiding is needed. They sit down and rest the hoodie in their lap, fingers tracing the dried mark on the sleeve. It's stiff there, textured. Evidence of contact. Evidence of having been somewhere real. For years they've been waiting for the moment when they'll finally feel clean enough to be themselves. When confidence arrives. When doubt disappears. When they no longer need protective layers. But maybe that moment was never about removing everything at once. Maybe healing is not a dramatic unveiling. Maybe it's a slow remembering. They fold the hoodie again more loosely this time and place it on the couch beside them. The room feels calm. Not warm, not cold, just neutral enough to breathe in. They realize something quietly important. They don't need to break the clay tonight. They don't need to expose anything. They don't need to prove the gold exists. Knowing it's there is enough. The pressure to perform eases. The habit of self-inspection softens. Not gone, just less loud. They stand and put the clothes away, one drawer at a time. The rhythm is grounding. The body knows what to do even when the mind is tired. When everything is done, they turn off the lights and sit for a moment in the dark. The house settles around them. Pipes click. A distant car passes. Ordinary sounds holding the night together. They place a hand on their chest, without thinking, feeling the steady beat underneath. Reliable. Unimpressed by surface conditions. Gold doesn't need constant confirmation. It doesn't dull because of contact. It doesn't disappear because it's covered. It waits. As they head toward bed, there's no sudden confidence, no emotional swell. Just a simple shift in posture. Less guarded, less apologetic. They are not made of clay. They never were. The clay was just the way they learned to stay intact. And now, in the quiet of this room, they understand something gently and completely. What's most valuable about them has never been at risk, only hidden for a while. That's not a loss. That's protection doing its job. The rain has already stopped, but the street still looks wet. Puddles sit in the cracks along the sidewalk, reflecting a sky that can't decide what it wants to be. Gray clouds hang low, thick enough to make the afternoon feel like it's wearing a heavy coat. The air smells clean, like the world just got rinsed. They walk without a destination, hands in their pockets, shoulders slightly forward, not because it's cold, but because the posture matches the mood. Earlier today, something small happened that didn't feel small. A short email, a quick comment, a rejection that was polite enough to be forgettable and sharp enough to sting anyway. Nothing dramatic, no shouting, no disaster. Just a quiet message that landed in the exact spot where doubt already lives. They've been carrying it around all day, like a stone in a pocket. Every time they paused, they could feel it. The weight, the reminder, the story their mind wanted to tell. See, you're not as good as you thought. You're behind. You missed your chance. You're not built for this. They know that voice. It doesn't scream. It doesn't need to. It has years of practice. It sounds reasonable. It uses facts, half-facts, old memories, and a tone that makes everything feel settled and final. They step around a puddle and keep walking. Shoes make a soft, damp sound against the pavement. A car passes slowly, tires hissing on the wet road. No one looks at them. No one knows what happened today. That's part of what makes it hard. When something hurts quietly, it feels like it must be personal, like it only happens to you. Like everyone else got the memo on how to be confident and you somehow missed it. They reach the corner and stop at the crosswalk. The light is red. They wait, watching the clouds drift above the buildings. The sky looks completely covered. No blue, no bright edge, just gray layered over gray. For a second, it feels like the day will stay like this forever, like the clouds are permanent, like the sun is gone. Then they remember something simple. The sun doesn't disappear when clouds show up. It's still there. It's just not visible. That thought is almost annoying in how obvious it is, the kind of thing people say when they're trying to be comforting. The kind of thing that can feel too small for real pain. But today, it lands differently. Because the clouds in their mind work the same way. A bad message arrives, and suddenly it feels like the truth. Like a final judgment. Like the whole story of who they are has been decided. But maybe it's just weather. Maybe the doubt is cloud cover, not the sky. They cross the street when the light changes. The walk sign flashes. They move with the crowd for half a block, then drift away again, letting people pass. They don't feel better yet. They just feel slightly less convinced. They keep walking until they reach a small strip of trees lining the sidewalk. Leaves are dripping, shaking off the last bits of rain. A branch moves in the wind and drops water onto the concrete in scattered taps. Tap, tap, tap. The sound is steady, almost patient. They stop under one of the trees and look up. The clouds are still thick, but the light has changed. Not bright, but different. A faint warmth behind the gray. A suggestion that something stronger is still working above it all. They inhale slowly. The air feels cool in the chest. They realize how much of today they've spent trying to force the clouds away, arguing with the rejection, replaying the moment, writing better responses in their head, imagining what they should have done differently, as if thinking hard enough could rewrite the sky. But clouds move on their own time. The mind, too. They rest one hand against the tree trunk, feeling the rough bark. Solid, real, not interested in their thoughts. The world continues regardless of whether they feel confident, and that strangely is comforting. Because it means their mood isn't in charge of reality. They start walking again slower now, not because they're trying to calm down, but because the urgency has lost some of its fuel. The stone in the pocket is still there, but it's not the whole pocket, not the whole body, not the whole day. They turn onto a quieter street. The houses look ordinary. Lights are starting to come on in windows. Dinner smells drift out faintly when someone opens a door. Life continues. The clouds remain overhead. And somewhere behind them, unseen but steady, the sun keeps shining like it always has. They don't check the weather app. Normally they would. out of habit, as if seeing the forecast might give some control over how the day feels. But right now, they let the sky be what it is without needing confirmation. The clouds are still there, thick and low. But the light keeps shifting, subtle changes that are easy to miss if you're rushing. The gray softens. The air warms slightly. The afternoon moves forward without asking for permission. They walk until their legs feel pleasantly tired, then slow near a small neighborhood park. The grass is darker from the rain, almost glossy. A few people sit on benches, jackets zipped, faces relaxed in that post-rain quiet. No one looks particularly happy. No one looks defeated either, just present. They sit on an empty bench and rest their hands in their lap. The wood is cool and damp. A faint breeze moves through the trees, shaking loose a few last drops of water. They think again about the message from earlier. It hasn't changed. The words are the same. The outcome hasn't softened. What has changed is the way it sits inside them. It no longer feels like a verdict. It feels like information. That difference matters. They've spent years believing that confidence means never doubting yourself. That self-worth means feeling solid all the time. That once you find it, it stays visible like permanent sunshine. But that's never been how weather works. Even the clearest skies cloud over. Even the brightest days end. None of that means the sun is fragile. It just means the world moves. They rest their head back against the bench and close their eyes for a moment. Not to escape, just to stop scanning for signs that something is wrong. Behind closed eyes, the light still exists. Diffused, gentle. Unimpressed by whether they notice it or not, they realize how often they've treated difficult feelings as evidence, as proof that they're lacking something essential. That if confidence disappears, it must not have been real to begin with. But confidence isn't the sun, it's the weather. Some days it's clear, some days it's hidden, some days it's not the point at all. The bench creaks softly as they shift. A child laughs somewhere behind them. A dog shakes off water, sending droplets in every direction. Life continues in small, uncurated moments. They don't feel inspired. They feel grounded. Grounded in the understanding that what's steady about them doesn't depend on how they feel at any given moment. That their worth isn't switched on and off by emails, opinions, or passing clouds of doubt. They open their eyes and look up again. The clouds are breaking slightly now. Not enough to reveal blue, but enough to let a brighter wash of light through. The park looks different under it, softer, more dimensional. They smile just a little. Not because everything is okay, because not everything has to be. They stand and start walking again, heading back toward home. The streetlights flicker on one by one, gentle halos forming against the darkening sky. The day is ending, whether it was understood or not. As they walk, they slip their hands out of their pockets. Their shoulders settle. The stone that's been riding with them all afternoon feels lighter now. Still there, just not in control. They think about how many times they've waited to feel confident before moving forward. How often they've postponed action until the clouds cleared completely. But the sun doesn't ask the clouds to leave before it shines. It shines anyway. They reach their door and pause, keys in hand. For a second, they look back at the sky one last time. Gray, quiet, honest. They don't need it to change. They don't need themselves to change either. They step inside, close the door, and let the day stay where it belongs. Outside, moving on. Behind everything that came and went today, something steady remains. Unseen, unbothered, still shining. And that is enough. The guitar had been leaning against the wall for months. Not broken. Not dusty enough to look abandoned. Just untouched. He noticed it one evening while turning off the lights. The room was quiet in that end-of-day way. No music, no TV. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator in the other room. He reached for the lamp, then stopped. The guitar was still there, exactly where he had left it. He used to play more often, not on stages, not for anyone special, just for himself late at night when the world felt too loud. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped. There hadn't been a clear reason. Life had simply filled the space. Work, responsibilities. The tired kind of evenings where even small joys feel like extra effort. He told himself he would get back to it when things slowed down, when he felt more like himself again. He walked over and picked it up. The wood was cool under his fingers, familiar, unchanged. He sat on the edge of the couch and rested the guitar on his knee. Didn't tune it, didn't play. He just held it. A thought surfaced uninvited. What's the point? I don't even play anymore. It wasn't cruel, just practical. The kind of thought that sounds reasonable enough to believe. He looked at the strings. They were still intact, slightly dull maybe, but not ruined. He ran his thumb gently across them. A soft, uneven sound filled the room. It wasn't a song, barely a note. Still, the sound lingered for a second before fading. He noticed something then. The guitar hadn't lost its value in the silence. It hadn't become less of a guitar just because no one was listening. It was still what it was. He leaned back and thought about himself. How often he measured his worth by what he produced, by how useful he felt, by how visible his efforts were. When those things slowed down, the doubt moved in quickly. He set the guitar back against the wall gently this time. Not like an object being put away, more like something being trusted to wait. He turned off the lamp. In the dark, the room felt different. Not emptier, just quieter. And for the first time in a while, the silence didn't feel like failure. He woke up the next morning before his alarm. The room was still dim, the kind of light that didn't ask anything from you yet. For a moment he lay there listening. The building settling, a car passing far below, someone's footsteps in the hallway. Nothing special, and yet he felt strangely present. As he got up, his eyes moved instinctively toward the corner of the room. The guitar was still there, leaning exactly where he had placed it the night before. It didn't call to him. It didn't demand anything. It just existed. While making coffee, his mind drifted back to a familiar pattern. How quickly he judged himself during quiet periods. How easily he confused stillness with falling behind. If he wasn't creating, improving, or contributing in a visible way, he assumed something was wrong. He carried his mug back into the living room and sat down. The guitar remained silent, and that was okay. He thought about all the objects in the room that held value without constant use. The couch that didn't prove itself every day. The books that waited patiently on the shelf. The lamp that stood ready even when it wasn't turned on. None of them had to earn their place each morning. Why had he decided that he did? He realized that somewhere along the way, he had tied his worth to sound, to output, to being noticed. Silence to him had started to feel like disappearance. But the guitar showed him something else. Silence wasn't absence. It was rest. It was potential not being spent. He reached over and touched the neck of the guitar again. Not to play, just to acknowledge it. There was no pressure to return to who he used to be. No need to reclaim a past version of himself just to feel valid. The instrument didn't care how long it had been quiet. It didn't keep score. It was ready when it was ready. And so was he. He stood up, rinsed his mug, and set it in the sink. The day would begin soon. Emails, meetings, responsibilities. But something had shifted. He didn't feel the urge to prove anything before stepping into it. As he left the apartment, the guitar stayed where it was, silent, whole. And for the first time, he understood that his value worked the same way. He started his night shift the same way he always did, by checking the perimeter, walking the same path he had walked hundreds of times before. The ground was damp from earlier rain, and the air carried that quiet, salty smell that only came from being close to the water. Most people were already home by this hour. Lights on, doors locked. Even the city seemed to lower its voice at night. He didn't mind working when no one was around. In some ways, it suited him. There was less to prove, less to perform. He passed a low fence and paused near the edge of the lot, where he could see the faint outline of the ocean beyond the structures. Far out in the distance, a lighthouse turned slowly, its beams sweeping across the dark with calm precision. The light didn't rush. It didn't blink for attention. It simply did its job again and again without checking who was watching. He leaned against the rail and watched it for a moment. There were nights when he wondered if his own work mattered. Security guard wasn't the kind of job people asked questions about with interest. It didn't sound impressive at dinner tables. When someone asked what he did, he usually answered quickly and moved on. Still, he showed up. Every shift, every weather, even on nights when his body felt heavy and his thoughts wandered too easily toward doubt. He checked his watch. Plenty of time left. As he continued walking, his footsteps echoed softly, steady, and unremarkable. He thought about how often he measured his value by response, by praise, by someone noticing. When no one commented, no one thanked him, he sometimes felt invisible. But the lighthouse didn't seem to struggle with that question. It wasn't waiting for applause from passing ships. It didn't dim itself when the sea was empty. It shone because that was its role. That thought stayed with him as he finished his round and returned to his post. He sat down, pulled his jacket closer, and let the night settle around him. The wind moved through the open space, carrying the sound of waves breaking somewhere beyond sight. The lighthouse beam crossed the water again, briefly lighting the surface before moving on. He realized something quietly. Purpose didn't need an audience, and maybe neither did he. He sat there breathing evenly, letting the thought land without forcing it to mean more than it needed to. The night continued. The light kept turning. And for now, that was enough. Later in the shift, the temperature dropped slightly, the kind of change you felt more in your bones than on your skin. He stood up and stretched, rolling his shoulders, then walked back toward the railing where the view opened up again. The lighthouse was still there. Its beam moved in the same slow rhythm, unbothered by the passing hours, tracing a circle that never rushed and never hesitated. Watching it, he noticed how steady it was, how little it seemed to care about whether anyone was counting its turns. He thought about how different that was from the way he lived. So much of his energy went into checking reactions, reading rooms, wondering if what he did mattered enough to be seen. Even kindness sometimes felt like it needed proof. He had held doors open, covered extra shifts, listened when people needed to talk, and then quietly wondered afterward if any of it made a difference. If no one mentioned it, the doubt crept in. The lighthouse offered a simpler answer. It didn't ask the sea if it was useful tonight. It didn't adjust its light based on traffic. It simply stayed on. That realization settled in him slowly, like warmth spreading rather than a sudden flash of clarity. He wasn't meant to shine for recognition. He was meant to show up because it was his responsibility, his choice, his way of contributing to the world as it was, and that was already enough. He returned to his chair and sat down, hands resting loosely on his knees. The radio beside him remained silent, its faint static barely noticeable. For once, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt complete. He thought about tomorrow, about the small routines that would fill the hour's coffee keys, the familiar walk to his post. None of it felt heavy anymore. He understood now that worth wasn't something handed out by passing ships. It was something steady, built through presence, through consistency, through staying lit even when no one looked your way. The beam crossed the water again. He breathed out slowly. The night moved on, and he moved with it, grounded in the simple truth that doing what you are meant to do, with care and without demand, is its own kind of light. There are days when you do so many things, yet by evening you feel completely empty. Not because you're lazy, not because you didn't try. It's just that your energy has been quietly leaking away, little by little all day long without you noticing. Like a bucket with a small hole in the bottom. You keep pouring water in, but it never quite fills. Rachel is 39 years old. She works in office administration and is a single mother to an 8-year-old boy. Her days start early and late, and in between are countless small tasks stacked back to back. That evening, after her son has fallen asleep, Rachel stands in the laundry room folding clothes fresh out of the dryer. The machine makes a steady thump, thump, sound, a familiar background rhythm of the night. She folds each shirt and places it neatly into a pile. The motions are automatic, no thinking required. But her mind refuses to rest. Remember to sign the school form tomorrow. I still haven't replied to that email. I wonder if there'll be enough money this month. Small worries. Each one on its own isn't enough to be called a crisis. But together, they're enough to make her feel more exhausted than she did during the busiest part of the day. Rachel sets down the last shirt. The stack of laundry is neat and finished. And yet, she doesn't feel done. She feels drained. She leans back against the washing machine and closes her eyes for a moment. The dryer keeps running steady and unhurried, not stopping just because she's tired. A familiar thought appears. Maybe I'm just weak. Rachel doesn't like this thought, but it arrives easily. As if whenever she feels worn out, her mind automatically searches for an explanation, and the most familiar one is blaming herself. She opens her eyes and looks at the folded clothes. They aren't the problem. Today wasn't exactly bad either, and yet her energy is gone. Not because she did something wrong, but because all day long she's been letting worry leak out without realizing it. Worry isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a stream of small questions that keep showing up. What if something goes wrong? Each question is like a tiny hole. It doesn't cause an immediate spill, but over time, the bucket empties. Rachel picks up a towel and dries her hands. Her movements are slow. She notices her shoulders are lifted, as if she's carrying an invisible load. She lets them drop, not forcing it, just releasing. And when her shoulders lower, the tension in her neck eases too. A very small change, but enough to remind her how much she's been holding inside. She thinks back to the morning. When her son asked a simple question, she'd answered a little sharply. Not because he did anything wrong, just because her bucket was already nearly empty. And when the bucket is low, even small reactions spill out easily. Rachel doesn't blame herself. At least not tonight. Instead, she sees the connection clearly. The more she worries, the more her energy leaks away. Not because worrying is bad, but because worrying without pause uses up a lot of water. She turns off the dryer. The laundry room grows suddenly quiet. In that quiet, Rachel can hear her own breathing more clearly. Not rushed, not perfectly even, but real, no longer crowded out by a mental to-do list. She carries the folded clothes into the bedroom and sets them on the bed. She doesn't fold anything else. This is enough. The rest can wait until tomorrow. Not out of laziness, but because her bucket needs to hold on to a little water for her too. If you're listening to this and often feel tired without knowing why, that's okay. You might not be lacking energy at all. You might simply be letting it slip away through small worries you haven't had a chance to notice yet. And tonight, you don't need to pour in more water. You only need to gently look at where it's been leaking. Rachel carries the folded laundry into the bedroom and sets it neatly on a chair, then turns off the light in the laundry room. The light behind her disappears. The hallway grows a little darker, a little quieter. She walks slowly as if her body already knows there's nothing left that needs to be rushed. In the kitchen, Rachel pours herself a glass of water. Not full, just halfway. She leans against the counter and takes small sips. The water is cool and simple, nothing symbolic at first glance. And then very clearly she realizes this: if a cup has a hole in it, filling it all the way doesn't help. What matters isn't adding more water, but stopping it from leaking out. She sets the glass down and looks around the familiar kitchen. Everything is where it should be. Nothing needs fixing right now. Nothing is about to fall apart. There are many unfinished things, but none of them need her attention in this moment. A thought appears: I need to remember tomorrow. Rachel pauses. She doesn't push the thought away. She simply says gently in her mind, tomorrow morning. Not a promise, just permission. She walks into the living room and sits on the sofa. The backrest supports her. Her feet rest on the floor. Her hands rest on her thighs. She doesn't pick up her phone. She doesn't turn on the TV. She isn't trying to relax. She's just allowing herself to stop spending any more energy. Some leaks are very small. They don't come from big crises. They come from always thinking one step ahead, always worrying one more round, always asking what if, even when nothing is happening. Those questions aren't wrong. But without a stopping point, they can drain us before the day is truly over. Rachel closes her eyes, not to fall asleep right away, just to stop looking for a while. Her exhale lengthens slightly. Her shoulders soften. Her stomach no longer feels as tight as it did earlier. Her body is quietly holding on to the water that remains. She thinks about her son, about the morning. A gentle worry appears, but this time it doesn't pull a long chain of thoughts behind it. It arrives and stays right there. It doesn't spread. It doesn't drill another hole. Rachel stands and walks into the bedroom. She doesn't refold the laundry. She doesn't organize anything else. She changes into her sleep clothes, pulls up the blanket, and lies down. The bed supports her body, just like the sofa did earlier, asking nothing more. Some nights, the kindest thing we can do for ourselves isn't to find a solution, but to stop draining ourselves further. To stop blaming ourselves. To stop pushing our minds to keep going. To stop letting small worries take the last bit of energy we have. If you're listening to this and recognize this kind of tiredness, that's okay. You don't have to patch every hole in one night. You just don't need to make any new ones. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be full. You only need to save a little for yourself. If you fall asleep at some point, that's completely natural. If you're still awake, you're safe in this pause. Tonight, you don't need to carry the whole world in your bucket. You can let it rest, and rest yourself too. There are moments when you've already gotten on the ride, already taken your seat, and yet your body still refuses to rest. Not because the ride is rough, not because the road is difficult. It's just that you're still carrying your baggage on your shoulders even though you don't need to anymore. And by evening, the tiredness doesn't come from the distance traveled, but from not letting yourself set the load down. Marcus is 41 years old. He works as a delivery driver. His whole day is a series of trips, stop deliver sign, get back in the vehicle, repeat. When his shift ends, he drives back to the parking lot behind the warehouse, turns off the engine but stays seated in the driver's seat. The motor is quiet now. His body isn't. He keeps both hands on the steering wheel longer than necessary. Not gripping it, just resting them there. As if letting go might cause something to slip away. Outside, the lot slowly empties. A few cars pull out red taillights, stretching into lines before disappearing. Marcus stays where he is, shoulders slightly raised, his back not fully aware of the seat behind him. Nothing major went wrong today. No serious delays, no complaints. And yet, in his mind, there's a long list of things he could have done better. Delivered a little earlier, spoken a little more smoothly to a customer, driven a little faster on that one stretch of road. Each thought isn't heavy on its own, but together they're enough to keep his shoulders from dropping. Marcus opens the door and steps out of the vehicle. The evening air is cooler, carrying the scent of asphalt and a light breeze. He stretches his arms, rolls his neck a few times. On his back is the familiar backpack. Not very heavy, but after carrying it all day, the strain is clearly etched into his shoulders. He takes the backpack off and places it on the passenger seat. A small movement, but as the straps leave his shoulders, Marcus exhales more deeply than usual, as if his body had been waiting for that exact moment. He stands beside the vehicle, leaning lightly against the door, looking out over the quiet parking lot. Some people are used to carrying everything themselves. So used to it that even when they don't have to, they still do. Like wearing a backpack while already sitting on the bus. Not because they don't trust the ride, but because they've grown accustomed to being responsible for every bit of movement. Marcus remembers riding the bus as a child, gripping his backpack tightly, afraid of dropping it, forgetting it, losing it. As he grew older, that habit didn't disappear. It just changed shape. The backpack stopped being books and notebooks and became responsibility, worry, and the feeling that he always had to be ready. He opens the car door and sits back down in the driver's seat. This time, his back rests fully against it. The seat supports his weight, something he rarely notices during the day. Marcus places his hands on his thighs. He's no longer holding the steering wheel. He doesn't need to hold anything. A familiar thought appears. What if something happens? He notices it and lets it stay. No answer, no argument. He looks at it the way you look at an old roadside sign. You know it's there, but you don't need to stop for it. Marcus closes his eyes for a few seconds. Not to sleep, just to feel the seat holding him. The engine is off. Nothing is moving. And in that stillness, he realizes something very simple. There are parts of the journey you don't need to walk yourself. You just need to sit still and let the vehicle do its job. He opens his eyes, takes the backpack from the passenger seat and places it on the floor of the car. Not on his shoulders anymore. Not because he won't need it tomorrow, just because right now it isn't necessary. The parking lot remains quiet. Nothing falls apart when he sets it down. If you're listening to this and feel tired even though you're done for the day, that's okay. Maybe you've already gotten on the ride, but you're still wearing the backpack, and tonight you don't need to prove that you can carry more. You're already on the ride. It's already carrying you. You can let your shoulders rest. Marcus stays in the car a little longer. No music, no phone. Just sitting there with the windows closed, the quiet parking lot, and the yellow lights spread evenly across the pavement. The backpack rests on the floor of the car, no longer touching his shoulders. The brief sense of emptiness passes quickly, replaced by a lightness he didn't expect. He leans further back into the seat. The car supports his full weight, his back, his hips, his shoulders. When he doesn't have to hold himself up, his body naturally finds a more comfortable position. A long exhale leaves him. Not forced, just happening. Some days we believe that if we stop carrying everything, things will fall apart. But tonight, as Marcus sits still in a car with the engine off, he sees the opposite. Everything is still there. Still okay. Even when he isn't carrying it on his shoulders. He opens the car door and steps outside. No rush. The backpack stays inside. He locks the door and stands there for a moment, looking around. A light breeze moves through. Distant insects hum. There's no sound asking him to react. No task waiting for him. Marcus walks toward his own car parked in another part of the lot. The path is short and familiar. When he gets in, he doesn't put the backpack on again. He places it on the back seat instead. A small decision, but his shoulders feel lighter immediately. The car rolls forward. Streetlights pass one by one, steady and calm. Marcus drives a little slower than usual. Not because he's tired, just because there's no need to hurry. In the rearview mirror, the cars behind him aren't pressing. The road is wide enough for him to move at his own pace. A thought shows up. Should I squeeze in one more task? Marcus notices it and lets it drift past. Right now, the car is doing its job, and his only job is to sit there, hold the wheel gently, and allow himself to be carried. When he gets home, Marcus parks by the entrance. He turns off the engine and stays still for a few seconds. Inside the house, the lights are off. No one is waiting for an explanation. No one needs him to keep trying. He opens the door, steps inside, and leaves the backpack near the entrance, not carrying it deeper into the house. In the living room, Marcus sits down on the couch. The backrest supports him just like the car seat did earlier. His body seems to remember how to be held again without bracing, without tightening. If you're listening to this and recognize how used you are to carrying everything yourself, that's okay. Many people grow up believing that holding it all together is what keeps them safe. But tonight, you can try something different. Let the ride carry you a little farther. You don't have to put everything down. Just the things you don't need to carry into sleep. Marcus stands and walks into the bedroom. He changes clothes, turns off the light, and lies down. When his head meets the pillow, his shoulders are no longer as tight as they were earlier in the car. His body remembers how to rest. If you fall asleep at some point while listening, that's completely okay. If you're still awake, you're still moving in a very safe rhythm. Tonight, you're already on the ride. It's already carrying you. You can leave the backpack behind and let your shoulders rest for a while. Sometimes the problem isn't that things are too complicated. It's that we're in a hurry. We want everything untangled right away. We want our minds to feel clear immediately. We want the discomfort to disappear as fast as possible. And that urgency is often what makes everything more tangled. Chloe is 22 years old. She works retail at a large store. Her shift ends close to 10 at night. When she gets back to her room, she drops into a chair, kicks off her shoes, and pulls her earbuds out of her jacket pocket. The cord is twisted into a small knot, familiar somehow, always like this. Chloe frowns. She tugs gently at one end. Nothing happens. She pulls a little harder. The knot tightens. She exhales sharply, a bit irritated. Why is it always like this? It's a small sentence, but it carries the weight of the whole day. She stands up and paces a few steps around the room, the tangled earbuds still in her hand. Her mind feels just as knotted. A comment from her manager, a difficult customer. A familiar thought slips in. Maybe I'm just not very good at this. The thoughts hook into each other. The more she pulls on them, the tighter they feel. Chloe sits down on the bed. She lets the earbuds fall onto the mattress. She stops pulling. She just looks. Under the warm yellow light, the cord becomes clearer. It isn't one impossible mess. It's just many small loops caught together. She uses 2 fingers to lift a section of the cord, turns it slightly, then sets it back down. Slowly. With no goal of fixing everything at once. Just testing one spot. One small loop loosens. Not much, but enough that the whole knot isn't as tight as before. There's something Chloe knows well, even if she rarely puts it into words. When her mind feels tangled, she tries to solve it fast. Find the right answer. Make a decision immediately. Get clarity now. But just like the earbuds, some things don't respond to force. Pulling harder doesn't move them forward, it just tightens the knot. She keeps going. Lift, turn, set down. No yanking, no tugging. When one loop refuses to budge, she leaves it alone and moves to another place. Strangely, when she stops focusing on the tightest knot, other parts begin to loosen on their own. As she works, her thoughts slow down too. They don't disappear, but they stop crowding each other. She's no longer replaying her manager's words. Not because she's resolved them, but because her hands are busy with something slow enough to bring her back to the present moment. At some point, Chloe notices her shoulders have dropped. Her neck feels less tight. Her exhales are steadier. Small changes, but real ones. She isn't trying to relax. She simply stopped rushing. Some problems in our minds are exactly like this tangle of earbuds. Not impossible to fix, just impossible to fix with force. They need patience more than determination, and sometimes the biggest step is simply stopping the hard pull. Chloe sets the earbuds down and stretches her hands. She looks out the window. Streetlights reflect off the wet sidewalk below. A car passes, then fades into the distance. Nothing out there is asking anything of her. She turns back to the earbuds. Another loop loosens. Then another. There's no moment where everything is suddenly done. Just a knot that's slowly becoming easier to breathe around, much like her mind right now. If you're listening to this and recognize how often you try to untangle your thoughts too quickly, that's okay. Many people do. But tonight you might not need to pull so hard. You can set things down, and loosen them one small step at a time. At some point, Chloe notices the room has grown quieter. Not because all sound has disappeared, but because nothing is pulling her attention too far away anymore. The wall clock ticks steadily. Traffic outside is thinned. The warm yellow light in the room hasn't changed, but the way she feels inside has. The earbuds on the bed are no longer tightly knotted like they were at first. There are still a few small loops tangled together, but they don't irritate her anymore. Chloe lifts one end of the cord, lets the rest fall softly onto the mattress. She doesn't pull. She just raises it, turns her wrist slightly, then sets it down again. Another loop loosens on its own. She realizes she doesn't need to untangle everything right now. The earbuds already work. The rest can wait. That realization feels much lighter than the pressure of having to finish it all. A familiar thought flickers through her mind. I always leave things unfinished. This time, Chloe doesn't react. She doesn't blame herself. She doesn't argue back. She lets the thought drift by like a thin strand of wire that no longer catches on anything. She coils the earbuds loosely, not trying to make them neat, just enough to place them in the drawer. When her hand closes the drawer, it feels like she's set down one more thing from the day. Chloe stands and walks into the bathroom. She washes her hands with warm water. The feeling of water running between her fingers helps her notice how tired her hands actually are. Not from heavy work, but from gripping too tightly for too long. As the soap rinses away, her fingers relax on their own. She looks at herself in the mirror, not searching for flaws, not judging, just looking. Someone who's made it through a long day and is learning not to pull so hard at everything anymore. Back in her room, Chloe turns off the main light, leaving only the small lamp by the bed. She sits down, pulls the blanket up to her thighs, then lies back fully. The bed supports her body. She doesn't need to balance herself. She doesn't need to think any further. Some nights, the best thing you can do for yourself isn't to solve every tangle, but to stop making them tighter. No pulling, no yanking, no forcing clarity. If there are still a few loose wires in your mind, that's okay. They don't need to be untangled before sleep. They can stay right where they are, harmless, as long as you don't keep pulling on them. Chloe turns onto her side. Her breathing slows. Not perfectly even, but comfortable. She isn't thinking about tomorrow. She isn't thinking about her next shift. She lets her body do what it already knows how to do: rest. If you fall asleep at some point while listening to this story, that's completely fine. If you're still awake, you're still moving in a very safe rhythm. You don't need to untangle everything. You don't need full clarity. You only need to release the force and let things stay as they are. Listen a little longer, or drift off whenever you'd like. Wherever you are tonight, I'm grateful you chose to spend this quiet time here. If these stories help you rest, you're welcome to subscribe and return whenever you need a gentle place to land. And now, you don't need to do anything more. Let the night hold what you can't carry. And if sleep comes, let it come.